We are on a small excursion today here in north central Florida. The freshwater springs are insane and we are dodging a crazy storm right now. Unfortunately, I don't have my bathing suit or anything. There is nothing I love more than doing work at a zoo. Renovating a radiated tortoise enclosure. Is all of this water is going to get pumped up here, and they have these incredible shells, these big yellow lines that kind of radiate out in a star type of a pattern. Anytime I'm traveling, I am always looking for native, natural wildlife. I'm also looking for the different habitats that the wildlife are going to be in. Here in north central Florida, the freshwater springs are insane. It is some of the most incredible snorkeling I have ever done in my life. And while we're up here working at the Central Florida Zoo, I wanted to make sure I had the opportunity to see some of these native aquatic ecosystems, because this is where life happens. And we are dodging a crazy storm right now. Unfortunately, I don't have my bathing suit or anything, but we're gonna try to check some stuff out over here, see what we can find. So this is the type of stuff that I love. I'm an underwater guy, love snorkeling, scuba diving, all that fun stuff, swimming, etc. But this area where the water meets the land, this is what we're trying to recreate on a regular basis. So I'm always looking at the vegetation, the logs, how everything interacts with and around it. And this is the type of stuff that we want to try to recreate on any one of our projects, let alone a project that's going to be for tortoises at a zoo. Again, the tortoises that we're working with, they are not aquatic species by any means. They're actually found in more drier areas, but they still have to come to water. Remember, everything needs water in some way, shape, or form. So having a clean source of water is always important whenever we're designing and building decorative water features and functional water features or stormwater management projects. Water is a critical component of our daily earth cycle. So this is the main point of the spring right here. So this is Blue Spring. And you can see this big kind of black hole right here. It goes down 130 feet deep. It's just insane. So that water just comes bubbling up out of it. It's over 1 million gallons a day of flow. So we currently don't have access into this area. And actually the park is going to be closing. But you can definitely see the difference in the water clarity and quality further upstream. So because of that heavy rainstorm, when we were just down that way a little bit, the water was already turbid. And that's just because of the runoff coming in from the surrounding areas. But now this water coming up over here is just spotless. I mean, crystal clear, literally, and it's going to keep flowing its way towards the St. Johns River. We have a really cool project coming up in front of us here. You know me as an environmental person as well as an animal person, and there is nothing I love more than doing work at a zoo. So we are working with Six Flags Nursery on a project at the Central Florida Zoo, which is just outside of Orlando. They're in the process of renovating a radiated tortoise enclosure. This is going to be a really cool opportunity for us because, as you all know, water is kind of that central component for any living organism. People, animals, plants, we all need water in some way, shape, or form. So if you're designing a brand new enclosure, you have to have that anchor. You have to have an aquatic-based system that these animals can utilize. But what we want to try to do is we want to try to replicate, especially in this application, some sort of a natural ecosystem. So radiated tortoise is really cool animal found in Madagascar. Just beautiful. They are very popular in the trade industry. Very docile animals. They don't get too large, long lifespan, have interesting personalities, and they have these incredible shells, these big yellow lines that kind of radiate out in a star type of a pattern. So just a beautiful animal, but they come from a very unique habitat in Madagascar. So if you're not familiar with Madagascar, it's located off of the coast of Africa. Go back who knows how many millions of years ago. Originally it was part of that continent, and it kind of slowly drifted apart through plate tectonics, which is really cool unto itself. Love to discuss all those type of things. We just don't have time for that. But in that process, as it split away, it took with it a unique form of animal life. So there's some incredible biodiversity found in Madagascar that's found literally nowhere else on the planet. And radiated tortoises actually happen to be one of those. So this is a really cool opportunity for us to kind of showcase a native type of system for this animal. It is going to be down in Florida. The Florida weather is a little bit different than Madagascar. I mean, they're probably found, I mean, they're both kind of a tropical type thing, but because of the length of Madagascar as well as the mountain ranges, there's actually a huge difference in precipitation from east to west as well as from north to south. The radiated tortoises are actually found kind of on the southern end, and I'm going to show you real quick kind of what this means just because of the geography of that specific area. Here's actually the landmass of Madagascar, and their prevailing winds are going to kind of come from this direction over here. This is all a massive mountain range right over in this section, which kind of is mimicked in this drawing over here. So what we have happening is we have moisture laden air that gets pushed up over the mountain range, and then as all of that stuff goes higher and tries to get over the mountains, it cools off. As it cools off, it becomes heavier and it comes down in the form of precipitation. So all that moisture kind of precipitates down, and then you have fog and rain and all types of things. So if you look at this map over here, you're seeing most of the precipitation is happening right here along the coast, because that's where all that moisture is getting dropped out as it starts to rise up. And as you go further inland, it gets lower and lower, and then down over here, it's kind of very unique. We get very, very little precipitation happening, and that's because of a rain shadow effect. Now, as that moisture kind of goes up, it drops down, you have very dry air coming down on the opposite end, which is causing a very unique environment. And that's what we have here. So if we look at that southern tip of Madagascar, this is the habitat for the radiated tortoise, and not very big. And as you can see, it actually used to be all the way out here where this blue was, and then it's been slowly declining and getting more condensed over time. And this is because of a wide variety of environmental factors as well as pressures that have been created by people capturing the animals, pet trade, eating the eggs. So there's a lot of things that actually occur. Then we also have climate change and things like that, which are happening around the world, which is putting stresses on all types of animals. So the challenge is the populations are getting smaller and smaller, so now it's becoming into more of a concern for people. Lots of conservation efforts are actually happening for these animals, which is why it's really, really cool to actually design something specifically for this incredible animal. So now we have this land mass. We kind of know where these animals are from, but now we need to kind of fine tune that and figure out very specifically where these animals will be found. So if you were to look at, again, Madagascar, over here we have those lush forested areas, which are going to be found more along that eastern edge. And then we have that southern edge, which is here. This is where those radiated tortoises are going to be found. You could see this is an actual riverbed. So this is a riparian habitat. During rainy periods, water is going to flow down these systems. But for most part of the year, it's actually going to be very, very dry. You're still going to have unique plants and things like that that are going to be found along the perimeters and things like that, which we want to take into consideration. So what we want to try to do is we want to recreate this guy over here. We don't want that lush tropical type of look. It's not really indicative of where this animal would be found. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a stream system. It's going to be kind of very rocky, and it's going to have a nice little flow going through it, but I want to be able to manipulate it to kind of meet up with a little bit of a rainy period and maybe a little bit of a dry period. And let me tell you exactly how I want to do that. We're going to work with what we call our pondless waterfall system. So a pondless waterfall is basically we have a stored body of water which is underground. It's hidden from sunlight. It's going to be kept in the dark. It's going to be cooler because it's protected, and it's also picking up the geothermal heating and cooling action of the surrounding subsoils. We're going to capture and store water in that underground reservoir. This reservoir is going to be about 3 to 3.5 feet deep. So that's going to help to really kind of stabilize the temperature inside of that water. So if you've ever been to Florida, you know they can get very, very intense heat. We're talking 100+ degrees, intense sunlight, etc. So by keeping that water cooler and in the dark and picking up that geothermal cooling action, it's going to stabilize the water temperature. And the reason I think that's important is the cooler water is going to have better water quality. So what happens with water, there's an inverse relationship between dissolved oxygen levels and the temperature. What I mean by that is the warmer the temperature gets, the lower the dissolved oxygen is. colder water, it's going to have higher dissolved oxygen. So by keeping this water cooler and in the dark, it's going to give us better water quality overall for the animals. So dissolved oxygen is very, very critical, not because this particular species is an aquatic turtle, but it's going to be good for all the microorganisms living throughout this stream bed that we're going to create. So riparian habitats are very, very unique. More species of plants and animals utilize these riparian corridors, and that riparian corridor is where that water kind of flows. More species of plants and animals find that place home than any other habitat on planet Earth. They utilize it for food, they use it for nesting, they utilize it obviously for getting water, for finding mates. So there's all types of things that are going to be happening along that water corridor. What we want to do is give the highest water quality possible for not only this particular species, but all the biodiversity that's surrounded with it. And whenever you do that, you're going to have better success with the animals that you're trying to manage. By having that water captured and stored underground, like I said, it's going to keep it cool, it's going to keep it in the dark, and it's going to be less prone to algal growth. Algal growth is a normal part of a healthy ecosystem, but in certain situations, especially in recirculated situations, you could actually have an abundance of algae growth, which actually kind of suffocates off some of the other forms of life inside the ecosystem. The other thing that's actually happening here, because we have this deep container of water, we could actually put the system on a timer. The reason that's good is we could actually replicate that dry period if we wanted to. So this system could actually be turned off periodically, and what would happen is all of this water that's inside of the stream system is going to continue flowing down into that underground reservoir. And what's going to happen is it's going to stabilize. So it's going to fill that entire tank up to the overflow point. And then when the pump is turned back on, the water level is going to drop back down to the normal operating level. And what's going to happen is all of this water is going to get pumped up here. It's going to go into our biological filter. Biological filter is basically home to microorganisms. So we have a variety of filter medias inside of here. We have high velocity water coming in. Sedimentation process occurs down here on the bottom. So that would be any of the bigger grains of sand and silts and stuff like that are going to settle out on the bottom for periodic maintenance. The water then is going to flow up through those different layers of filter media. It's going to come into contact with those microorganisms, which are going to break down any of the nitrogenous waste that's actually generated from the animals living inside the ecosystem. And all these little microbes are basically going to feed on all of that nitrogen source and the phosphates and things like that. Those organic compounds will be recycled inside of the ecosystem. And this is really kind of the nuts and bolts of an ecosystem concept. During that time, because of this is a living filter bed, it's loaded with little animals, and you can't see them with the naked eye, they're consuming oxygen during that process. So this is why we have a waterfall on the outfall part. So that's going to help to re-oxygenate the water. The water then is going to cascade over river rocks and things like that and work its way back down into that subterranean reservoir. So this is a closed type of an ecosystem. So this is a nice, clean, simple system for these animals. What I love about it is much better than what the animals have been used to, which is basically a concrete trough that the managers would fill up and drain on a daily basis. They would clean it all out, fill it up with fresh water, and then the animals utilize it, and they would drain it out the next day. With this type of a system, we can go for many, many weeks, if not months, or sometimes even a year or more in certain situations where they could manage this without causing any issue and not having that higher maintenance. The other thing that we're going to do here is outside of the back of this filter system, we're going to set it up with a T located right in between, and we're going to split another section of piping off. We're going to have a valve on that piping. So now periodically the managers could just open this valve, they'll turn off the pump, and then what will happen is all the water held inside of this filter will backflow by gravity down through the system, and then they could drain that water away. This is a backflush system that will help to eliminate any of that built up sediments and things like that. This will increase the water quality and decrease the overall maintenance, and it will allow the managers of this project to go, like I said, for many, many months, if not a year or more, with minimal maintenance. And that's my goal, as I want to create an aquatic ecosystem that's healthy for the animals, but it's also easier to maintain for all the managers and animal keepers at the zoo. I hope you enjoyed this. This is going to be a really, really cool project. We have a lot of unique things that are happening here, and I know there's going to be a lot of cool stuff that actually occurs once we get back down on site. Stay tuned for this incredible project. We'll see you soon.